Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti, hoping you guys are having a fantastic day and that you're looking after yourselves and one another. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I want to welcome back to the channel Ken Cheshire. How's it going, Ken?
Going great. Glad to be back.
Glad that you're back. And the one and only Mr. Jim Bricker. How's it going,
Good
Jim?
morning. I'm doing fine, thank you.
That's good. You're looking wonderful, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's my
Nice
new conditioner.
Nice color in your cheeks. Anyways, uh, and Sagosh, how's it going? Sagosh, how are you?
Good, Aman.
That's good. That's good. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we've all come together today is we are discussing album anniversaries. And today we are looking at albums that were released in the month of September for 1985. We also have one that was released in September of 1995. So we are going to go through the list. And as I look on my screen, first of all, we have a hell of a list to talk about. And yes, and as I look on my screen, we are going to go with Jim's going to go first, and then Sagosh, then Ken. Okay.
Alrighty.
Now, as I look on my list here, because I keep lists here, ladies and gentlemen, first up on the list, we have Kate Bush uh, with Hounds of Love. Fantastic
Woo.
album released September 16th, 1985, recorded from November of 83 to July of 85, released to her longtime label EMI, produced by Kate Bush, with a playing time of 47 minutes and 33 seconds. Now, 12 tracks on the album, 5 on side 1, 7 on side 2. Remember back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, when you could fit 7 songs on a single side of an album on vinyl? It was possible, very much so. But I'm not one to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me. But I will keep my opinion to the very end, as is customary with these episodes. And Jim is going to give us his opinion on this release. Jim,
Well, thank you, Armando. So
you're
we've
welcome.
discussed Hounds of Love in depth in a previous episode, and I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on it, other than to kind of go through a few key highlights. Um, One, this came out when I was in college, and in the music circles that I traveled in, everyone was listening to this record. It was not really sure how to describe it. It's like everyone needed to get their hands on it and realize that there was something incredibly, incredibly special about this record from the get-go. Um, Two, I happen to think that this album is just a perfect 10 out of 10. Um, just the way the songs are performed, constructed, the whole Ninth Wave suite on side two is this just epic scope of a piece of music that goes from the most, fearful and intimate to the most like cosmic that you can kind of imagine. It really, I mean, Armando was fond of saying that albums take you on a journey. Side
Hmm.
two takes you on a
The,
freaking journey.
yes, it does.
Um,
It does. Jim, could you just explain to the audience briefly what side 2 is about with the ninth wave?
oh, good Lord. I think it's about a woman who is finding herself drowning at sea. Don't know the circumstances. They kind of don't really matter to how she got out there, but it's this journey of her trying to find rescue and all the things that kind of
Yes.
go through her heart and mind as part of that, whether it's her own circumstances, wondering what she's done to be put in this place, thinking of her loved ones, uh, almost drifting off to the point of death. It's it I don't can't really think of anything quite like it, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why it was so stunning when it came out. Clearly, this was this song cycle that just you know was very, very, very unique. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
Easier to probably get your head into than say, oh, Tales from Topographic Oceans, but there were some pretty meaty, proggy concepts going on within this suite. Um, yeah, yeah. Of course, I think Kate's. So this was the album that really sort of planted Kate in the public consciousness, and then in the what is, I guess, like the last 5 years or so, when Stranger Things, the TV series, used "Running Up That Hill" in one of their episodes, Kate's star really sort of took off again. Um, but when in 1985, and then of course into 1986, when you had Kate on Peter Gabriel's "So" album as well. I mean, these were heady days to be a Kate Bush fan, and so every time I hear "Hounds of Love," I'm instantly transported to that college place in the mid '80s, and I just kind of marvel at what an amazing record this is. The only other comment I'll make is that early on, when my younger son was starting to get into music, he seemed to have this chip on his shoulder for some reason about female artists just not being able to sort of get into it. And this would have been like 14, 15, something like that.
Oh
I
boy.
played Hounds of Love for him on a car trip that we were on one day, and that broke him. That was the thing that just kind of made him sit back, just kind of stupefied at what he was listening to, and sort of, I think, opened his ears to a whole new world, to quote Aladdin. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm curious to what Sagosh and Ken have to say.
I'm curious at the fact that you quoted Aladdin. Okay, but that's good. That's good. Okay.
I'm glad I didn't sing it.
Thank God. Thank God. We're moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Sagosh, what is your opinion of this album?
Well, what Jim said, I mean, it's just perfect. And more than being perfect, I think what really sets us apart in Kate Bush's entire discography is that it's really that kind of sweet spot album. Uh, there, you could say the most perfect adjective to describe Kate Bush in general is idiosyncratic. She doesn't really come across as somebody you can get into easily. Usually, both her vocal stylings and her melodic and harmonic choices leave you a little bit confused. It's not easy to
Yeah,
at first listen at all, no matter which album you're getting into.
yeah.
So, for me, considering all that, I think Hounds of Love is that sweet spot kind of album where it's the perfect balance between all her, more experimental and eccentric sides and straight out great, well produced, catchy pop music. And it presents itself as the perfect introduction to Kate Bush, really. I don't think there is any other album that can really make somebody a fan otherwise. Everything else requires a lot of effort and understanding. I mean, I actually started with The Kick Inside. I got into Kate Bush very late. Surprisingly, she actually had a handful of songs played on radio in India. And in fact, three of her albums were actually released on vinyl in the early 80s. I must find out who the
Wow.
dude is who went ahead and did that. I mean, if nothing else, I want to ask him like whether they sold anything more than 20 copies. Because we had Black Heart, Never Forever, and Hounds of Love. All three of them were released on vinyl in India. And I can only assume this was done by some crazy Kate Bush fan who was like, I have to put this out. Doesn't matter if anybody buys it or not. So anyhow, I heard Kate Bush first in my younger days. I was like maybe 10, 11. And that was really not an age to be getting into this music. And
No.
No.
radio being what it was, they had no concept of playlists or singles or radio friendly tracks. The general assumption was that you just put a record on and picked a random track and played it, which led to some interesting benefits. I mean, there's a lot of deep cuts that I got into through radio simply because the DJs just didn't care. They would play whatever they wanted. But on the in the case of somebody like Kate Bush, I think it works to a disadvantage because most of her deep cuts are like really, really, an acquired taste. And I would have benefited from hearing something like Running Up That Hill first. So yeah, by the time I actually got around to listening to this album, I had heard a few Kate Bush albums already. And like I said, immediately it struck me as the kind of album that should really put her on the map and did. It's just too accessible, well produced. It has a great sound, and it gives enough importance to her, more creative side on the side B suite. And I cannot think of a better example of a sweet spot album. I think to some extent, maybe Automatic for the People comes to mind because
Hmm.
again, that's a case of, they had the big singles and they had these great deep cuts, and it just worked out. It was just that moment for that band, really. And
Hmm.
I think love's much the same for Kate Bush. I have very little to say about the songs individually because I mean, I don't know how you can describe it. It's just an experience.
It is. It is. Okay. Thank you for that. Ken?
Okay. It's obvious to me that Jim and I were not at the same college. Um, I honestly, as far
Sorry.
as people that I know personally, don't know anyone back then that got into this album. My primary note for this album, and I have tried, you know, like you say, we've talked about this album before. I've read it about it, a gazillion times. And I keep thinking, okay, I'm missing something. I'm going to go back and listen to it. Um, my note here is it's too art pop for me, but I don't think
Hmm.
that's accurate. Um, I think and we'll revisit this topic in a little bit later in this video. It part of it's her voice, um, some of it's her style that it just doesn't grab me. Over all this many years, 40 years, and it still doesn't upon revisiting. Uh, Although I've never before actually gone through track by track and quote unquote analyzed it. I do like the bass guitar work on Mother Stands for Comfort. Um, the
Eberhard Weber.
Yeah, the Ninth Wave, I get it. Um, and it's like, okay, well, this is interesting. And then it goes into Waking the Witch. That completely blew me. It's like, no, that ruined. I realize it has a place in the telling of the story, but it just did not appeal to me. I recognize objectively, I recognize the greatness of this album, but subjectively, it just doesn't resonate with me.
That's
There we
fair.
go. It's one of those things Marna, specifically you point out. Some things just hit, some things don't.
Some
Okay.
things hit you over the head.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, I get
um,
it.
just like on social media, I'm going to be the curmudgeon of the group here and just say, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
For me, I love this album. Um, I I've been aware of Kate Bush since, Army Dreamers and The Man with the Child in His Eyes, and later on with Woman's Work, and but this album, when it came out, was all over Much Music. The singles for the album were all over Much Music. They were played ad nauseum, and excuse me, I was not aware of the Ninth Wave as a concept side of the album at all. But I was reintroduced by Jim to this album, and I thank you for it. I think that, yes, yes, you can take credit for that. But I think Kate Bush has always been an artist that went by her own rules. And I think when she first signed to Harvest EMI, because I have the Harvest releases of The Kick Inside on vinyl and Lionheart, etc. I also have the box set that came out a few years ago of the remastered albums, part one. Um, so much for not being a collector. But I think that when she first signed to Harvest and EMI, she said to them, don't expect me to follow the rules in terms of what I want to write because it's not going to happen. And she stuck to that. She stuck to that. I think that Running Up That Hill is a fantastic, very rhythmic track. I think, every track on side one is great. Is great. Cloud Busting, the video, massive hit. The storyline with Donald Sutherland in the video that, helped tell the story. It had hit written all over it. And I think that the ninth wave as a side, I think you have to attack it and look at it as a side, as a one cohesive piece of music. I don't think you can dissect it or separate it in any shape, form, or fashion because that takes away from the overall telling of the story. Um, and because I'm listening to it and I knew vaguely what it was about, like you, Jim, I knew, but trying to listen to it and trying to sort of get into the mindset of this individual, not Kate Bush, but the character of in the
Mhm.
story was difficult for me. Um, but sometimes challenge can be good, in that respect. I do think it's great. I think this is a fantastic album. And if you, again, I am one for saying that albums take you on journeys. If you want to go on a journey and not sit there and question where you're going to end up, this is for you. If not the whole album, side two, The Ninth Wave, is for you. Track 6 through 12. Listen to it, enjoy it, revel in it, relish it, because
Or
it is
experience it. It may
just
take you a while to enjoy it.
however that you can experience it, do so because you'd be better off for it. My personal opinion. But I'm always looking for different music to listen to and to get into. The same thing happened with me when I first heard Hijira from Joni Mitchell. My mind was blown. I was like, okay, this is it. I can get into this. This is good. This is earnest. And I feel the same way about this album. But I can understand where Ken's coming from to an extent. I can understand, where people would say, okay, this is not for me. This is not for me. Because she doesn't go by standard, I guess you'd say, pop rules in terms of how to write a pop hit. She
Right.
kind of comes like who said this? Christine McVie quickly said about Stevie Nicks. She always attacks a song from the inside out in terms of her musical composition and in terms of her lyrical content. To me, I would put Kate Bush and Stevie Nicks in the same realm, in the same space. That's my humble opinion, but there we go. So, but yeah, it's a good album. And if you just want to put something on with a drink, coffee, I don't drink, coffee, tea, whatever, and just sit back and enjoy, this is for you. Full stop. Like, honestly, really. All right, we must continue, ladies and gentlemen. From the sublime to the I don't know what. Anyway, let's not even go. Okay, let's get into this. Um, Released September 18th, 1985. We're talking about the Replacements with their album Tim, recorded from June to July of 1985, released through Sire Records through Warner with a playing time of 36 minutes and 26 seconds. Jim?
Yo. Okay. So, for those uninitiated, the replacements are kind of held this darling spot to the alt college rock crowd in the early '80s. As I listened through this album, I could hear all kinds of different checkpoints in terms of genres. You got your set alt rock, college rock, power pop, garage rock, lo-fi, punk, down tempo. It's all here. Um, there's just not For me, there's just not a lot in this album that grabs me. I can get the appeal of it to that selective audience, to quote Spinal Tap,
Mhm.
but this is just not my wheel bag, and I think the reason is that I'm missing hooks in these songs. They just kind of keep sort of going along on kind of this, monotone way. They're I should revise my statement. Catchy hooks. There are hooks in here, but there's nothing here that really sort of grabs me, melodically. Left of the Dial, I think, may be the only tune on here that really kind of grabbed me with any sort of positive attention. Uh, but the rest of it just kind of is just a big meh for me. It's quite a contrast with, Hounds of Love, which, one can argue is, well, it is quite a different record. And people may say, well, geez, there's not a lot of hooks going on within Hounds of Love either. It's not exactly a Beatles record or a Burt Bacharach song, but there's an engagement in how the tunes are presented, performed, and even in the songwriting themselves that really sort of grabs the listener in a very positive and curious manner, sort of demanding attention. And the replacements to me just kind of seems like old wallpaper that seems to be peeling off the walls. Too many frat parties, too many bong hits.
Okay. Some people would say not enough bong hits, but that's another issue altogether.
I wouldn't know anything about those, so yeah, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, Mr. Purity on the channel, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Okay, thank you, Jim. So, go what's your opinion of this album?
This is the only replacements album that I've heard, and I know they have like this reputation of being this very celebrated, indie rock band from that period. I couldn't really get into it, but I do see some merits here. I mean, fundamentally, I find their sound a bit, unpleasant for my liking, shall we say. I'm not a fan of Westerberg's vocal style. It just doesn't gel with me. But having said that, I would disagree that there aren't good enough hooks here. I would say maybe like four or five songs have some pretty decent hooks. I like Hold My Life a lot. Kiss Me on the Bus is your classic, power pop sing along kind of tune. I think that's very, very accessible. Bastards of Young is a song I shouldn't like, but I don't know. It just grabs me somehow. It's a very archetypal, uh, kind of semi hard rock tune with a driving rhythm and all that. It's not really my bag, but somehow that chorus just grabs me. The highlights here, I would say, maybe the sort of dripping with sarcasm rockabilly tune "Waitress in the Sky," and
Yeah.
the real high point is comes right at the end with "Here Comes a Regular," and that's like really that's where you can feel some power in Westerberg's songwriting. Uh, that song just paints such a perfect picture of the character it's trying to portray. And of course, it's been done before. I mean, Tom Waits made a whole career out of it. But
True enough.
there is something about that track that grabs you. I mean, there is a sense of pathos, a sense of, you do empathize somehow, even though you know he's just being self-destructive. There's something about that track. Left of the Dial, as Jim mentioned, is a track that sticks in the mind. The rest of it is a bit, yeah, muddy and all over the place. It's archetypal indie rock with nothing really going for it. So it's a mixed bag. I would say about maybe 40%, 40 to 50% of it is pretty good. The rest of it is, yeah, I mean, just blends into the background without any real highlight to show for it. So yeah, maybe a six for me.
Oh, you actually, oh, you gave it a rating. Okay, that's more than what I would give. Moving on. Thank you, Sagosh. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay,
Good
Ken,
comments.
Yeah, great job, Shigosh. That, yeah,
I
I
agree. I
echo
agree.
99% of that. Of course, this is basically a Paul Westerberg vehicle. Um, I recognize the name. I've come across it
Hmm.
many times, but I never could place a specific song or sound to it. The album is, like you said, Jim, it's so many different things, styles, and whatever jumbled into one album. It's a very uneven album for me. There are three songs specifically that it's just like, I'm, yeah, I can skip this song. The rest of it is just like, mm, okay, you know. Um, Swinging Party. Um, I do have a note next to Swinging Party. So it's quite nice. I agree with you, Shigosh, on those other tracks. Um, but the other thing that struck me is, to me, there are the negative songs on this album seem to me like seeds of what would come in the 90s and become very popular
You
because
mean
there's a
with
lot
grunge?
of
With
of,
grunge.
of yeah, there's I try not to get into too many conversations on X with others about, artists, albums, and music of the 90s, because that's when I'm usually going to tick someone off just because it's like, it's not for me. And, of course, toxic fandom demands that I be obliterated off the face of the earth for it. Um, Honestly, the except for those three songs, I was really a little bit pleasantly surprised. I expected to dislike the vast majority, if not all of the tracks on this album. Yeah, I agree, Shigosh. I'd probably give it the same rating that you would. Not looking to visit this or really any other replacements. So yeah, a big meh for me.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. Both of you. Sagoshi, you really gave
Yeah.
a good point of view on this. And so do you, Jim. My opinion? No. No.
Can we
Care to
quote you on
elucidate?
that?
You know what? I listened to the album and my first thought was punk happened in 1976 and 1979. Uh, no, this is not, I mean, and I should say to I forgot to mention that the album was produced by Tommy Erderly, if I pronounced that correctly. I don't, there, it's the vocals that get to me. I cannot get past that. To me, there's not one redeeming quality about this album, about this kind of music. Call it frat rock or college rock or pop or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to even call it. Yeah, punk happened between 76 and 79. Okay. Uh, we don't need another individual trying to be the Sex Pistols. Sorry. I was like, I don't, or Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't find anything redeeming about this album at all. There's nothing. I wouldn't go back to this. If you gave me a copy, I'd use it as a coaster. I would. I would. I use it if it was vinyl. I'd throw it as a frisbee. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I had higher hopes going into this record, and maybe, given the comments, Sagosh, that you've made, I'll revisit it. There are a couple of tracks that kind of live in my head from the Replacements. One is "I Will Dare" from their "Let It Be" album. Yes, they called an album "Let It Be." And
Of
then there
course.
was a song that came after the Tim album. Um, I think the record is called "Pleased to Meet Me." No, it's a subsequent one. It's a song called "I'll Be You," which is a really, really well done, power pop song. It feels like they kind of nailed the formula for that particular tune, and maybe it had to do with the production on it. It's sounded very much like where REM was going in the very late 80s and into the 90s. Um, to me, I would recommend "I'll Be You" and "I Will Dare" as sort of some really good, replacement songs if you want to sort of wet your whistle in that genre or with this band.
Okay, duly noted. Duly noted. I just, again, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Oof. Oof.
You
Um,
tried though, Armando.
no, I
Yeah.
did, and this was trying on my nerves. Sometimes, man, it was,
Hey,
it was like, it was. No, I did try. I did try, but I just could not get into it.
yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we must continue. Our next album on our list, released September 24th, 1985, one Jane Siberry with her release, The Speckless Sky, recorded in 1985, released on Duke Street Records. Duke Street Records was distributed by MCA Records. Album was produced by Jane Siberry and John Switzer, with the single releases of One More Color and Map of the World Part 2. I'll give my opinion of this album um, later. I will have to say that just before I relinquish the mic, that Jane Siberry's vocal style could be considered offbeat at times. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. But, I'm it's not a slight, it's just an observation. Over to Jim for his assessment of The Speckless Sky.
Well, I wasn't going to bring this up, but since you mentioned just distribution, I thought it was interesting that in the United States, that Speckless Sky was distributed on Windham Hill Records, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I guess they were trying to go more exploratory pop, and boy, I tell you, this album hits it. Um, It's interesting that we have a Jane album and a Kate album in the same episode. There are a lot of people that kind of, compare and conflate the two for good or ill. Um, I'm of two minds about this record, and both of them are positive. One, it's quirky, bright, winsome art pop. On the other hand, it's new wave meets cheery German expressionism. And I don't know how to reconcile the two. I don't even know how to reconcile cheery German expressionism as it is, but that's the description that kind of comes to me about this record. It's just this massive dichotomy of, bright pop and like, looking at a Fassbender film or something. It's just, it's very, Ken, you talked about sort of the broad variety, within the Replacements record. This to me has even got a broader variety to it with, very, winsome tunes and very kind of dark, brooding tunes.
Hmm.
The other thing about this record is that it's kind of an inverted bell curve for me. You've got tracks one and two, which are fantastic, and then you get to like three, four, and five, and for me, the album dips a little bit. But six, seven, and eight is where it goes off like a rocket ship. So, speaking of track eight, the taxi ride to me is absolutely one of the most perfect songs I've ever heard in terms of being able to capture a mood and have it be perfectly expressed in composition, performance, arrangement. It just really rips my heart out of my chest and demands that I stare at it for a long time and just try to ponder what the heck I've heard in terms of just the emotional weight that's going on with this song. I think it's just absolutely perfect. Um, yeah, Jane is this was not the first Jane album I heard. The first one was The Walking. So I kind of went backwards in her discography from there. And we've had a whole episode talking about Jane Siberry. And
Yeah,
for
please check
those
it
who have
out.
not,
Please check
yes,
it out.
exactly. Um, I think this is an absolutely delightful record. In spite of the inverted bell curve, there are, there are strong qualities in that dip, but the highs are just so much more higher, in my opinion on this. It's an absolutely wonderful record. I would still choose Hounds of Love over this in terms of the whole, do I go for Kate or do I go for Jane? Ease up there, Ken. But that's how I hear it.
Uh, Ken's all right, ladies and gentlemen. He's just having an attack. Go on.
Ken is fine.
Just
I'm just gonna
brain hemorrhage.
brain hemorrhage. Yeah, well, Ken, the image that comes to mind, when we were getting into this dialogue is that I'm just gonna have this Jeff Bridges Big Lebowski thing as I just stir a drink and stare at you, kind of stupefied for a while. So
That image doesn't help. So
Yeah, no, no.
nope.
But listen, this is let's put it this way. This is not Black MIDI. So no musical brain hemorrhage for me in this point. But go
Fair
please
enough.
continue.
I give, Jane, at least a solid 8 out of 10. I think this record is, absolutely fantastic. It does sound dated. It does sound like 1985 in a way that ease up
Kate
Cheshire
doesn't.
in a way that Hounds of Love doesn't sound like 1985.
Wow.
Oh
Okay.
Lord, I would disagree, but go ahead.
I please, gentlemen, Sagosh, help a brother out.
Sagosh, what is your
Bring us
opinion?
down to earth, Jagosh.
I agree absolutely with Jim. And in specific, in fact, to the exact points where the album dips and rises. The first two tracks are great. From the very large hat onwards, it starts going down a bit. In fact, that particular song is ever so slightly. I mean, annoying is too strong a word, but something about the production on that song particularly turns me off. It's a little too 80s. The first two songs are great. They are again still laden with a lot of heavy 80s drums and synths, but melodically they're very strong. And in general, I think like uh, while comparisons with Kate Bush are reasonably valid, but I find personally, from what little I've heard of Jane Siberry, I've heard about maybe three or four albums. I find that she is, at least to me, a lot more accessible than Kate Bush. I don't think she is quite as given to eccentricity, especially with her vocal stylings, as Kate Bush. Yes, the melodies can go a little here and there, but
I
I
would
don't know.
agree.
Everything I've found quite enjoyable. Nothing that really, there's no waking the witch here, really. And,
Okay.
as Jim mentioned, track six onwards, from the Empty City onwards, it just keeps going higher and higher. Uh, the atmosphere of those last three tracks, just astounding. And I love, I mean, that's, I think, kind of her USP, the whole, multi-track layered vocal symphony kind of thing that she has going. And that really works very well on those last few tracks. I especially like it when she almost goes into a bit of counterpoint where like there's one voice which is doing a sort of backing and the other voice sings the lead melody, and they work very well together. She definitely has a very unique and interesting musical sense, and I think she's a bit of a vibe. If you like one album, you will probably like them all, and I do. Everything that I've heard so far, I've heard this album, which is the last album I've heard. I started with The Walking, then When I Was a Boy, and Bound by the Beauty, and I think I
Mhm.
heard one of her albums came out I think 2020 or thereabouts, and it was just as good. There's really a remarkable consistency to her style. I mean, she found her niche very early, I would say, and stuck to it very well. That
Right.
I absolutely love this album, and I have no qualms in giving it a solid 9. I, I don't think any, at least whatever I've heard, I don't think anything rates lower than a 9. She's
Mm,
an astounding artist. It's much more awareness.
okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Ken, your
Okay.
opinion?
So, I mentioned my one note on the Kate Bush album was it's too art pop. And like I said, I retract that because to me, categorically, this fits in, the same subgenre. Um, However, I agree with you, Armando. I've always been in search of something new when it comes to music. And usually, 9 times out of 10, uh, the the pony that I find under the massive pile of crap is usually something that's not going to be um,
Oh, geez.
real
Okay.
commercial. In other words, it's usually not going to be something that everyone is going, ape crap over.
Pretty much left of center. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Jane Seabury, at least where I am in the States, and Jim is the only other person or the first person in 60 years of life that I met that knew even who she was, much less, liked her also. Um, this was, I didn't know anyone else even in 85. I don't remember exactly what got me into her other than that connection with Wyndham Hill somehow, because I was doing the Michael Hedges and all the other Wyndham Hill artists. And I think Speckless Sky was my first Siberia album. It could have been The Walking. It's too long and I'm too brain dead to remember. However,
Jeez.
this is
Okay.
maybe one of my favorite, if not the favorite album of hers to me. Um, Jim, you mentioned it's interesting. This comes in the same year as Kate. Keyboard Magazine at the time compared Jane Siberry's sound to, and I quote, Petula Clark trying to sound like Kate Bush.
That's right. That's right. I remember reading
Yeah,
that
pretty
quote. Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I, the more I think about that, the more I get a brain cramp. But I think one
But
thing
I
I
get
like
it.
about, well, yeah, I think one thing I love about this album, it's hard for me not to compare this to Hounds of Love. Um, Part of it, this doesn't feel quite so um, drowning in synthesizers as the other one. Um, to
Really?
me, I know it's in here
I,
heavily,
I kind of
but it
get where
just
he's
doesn't
coming from. Yeah.
feel overly, synthed.
Yeah. I
Um,
kind of get where you're coming from.
the
But hmm.
musicianship on this album is absolutely unbelievable. You can pick with the mix, you can pick out every single instrument is doing at any given time rather
Hmm.
than this overall wash, this quote unquote wall of sound kind of thing. And I think that's amazing that it was produced by um, Jane and John Switzer, that um, they knew what their strength was and they were able to catch it on tape. Jim, here is your
Yes.
album of a plethora of mixed meter here. This
Yes.
Hmm.
mixed
Yeah.
meter is all through this.
Yeah.
Um, Armando, I didn't experience any of her stuff on the radio. So the fact that One More Color, was a popular hit of hers, it's just another album track for me. But it's incredible. I find that Jane's melodies are um, more varied than many singers at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, I understand what you mean, Shugosh, about a very large hat. My note on that is a new wave samba, which
Mhm.
is kind of which is kind of interesting. I don't mind it. My least favorite on the album is Vladimir. Vladimir. It's overall, it's I'm not a big fan of a lot of ambient music, and that is here. However, it doesn't turn me off that I would skip it. I'd still let it play. Um, your your inverse bell curve would also probably include Mein Bitte.
Yeah.
It's got that element of Sprechstimme in it, which I think is she does very well. Um, but I can't help but laugh when she gets to the end of that verse. It says, "Work is not fair." Wah!
Yes.
It's like, if that's not a TikTok moment, I don't know what is. Um, with what we're seeing in culture these days. She did three different songs called Map of the World. This
Yeah.
one is my favorite.
Hmm.
This song is so epic in scope. It's just unbelievable, to me. It's definitely one of my favorites. I agree with you, Jim, about Taxi Ride. Um, Incredibly tender and heart-wrenching. And you don't really quite get it unless you're really paying attention to, I think, the lyrics. It
Hmm.
just comes off as kind of a slow, soft ballad. But this is a fantastic example of the music and the lyrics reflecting one another perfectly. Um,
Hmm.
Well
I,
said.
yeah. After this, I'll probably go back and watch that video we did of her albums and just, it's been it seems like another lifetime since we've done that.
Yeah.
But
No, it's true. We've done a lot
so
since,
been
but
over
yeah.
a year, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does have a lot of the 80s aesthetic as far as the guitar effects, the synths, um, but it just doesn't fall into the song stylings of the 80s. She's got this
Oh,
unique
right.
song form style of her own that's not just chorus verse or verse
First
chorus
chorus,
bridge
bridge
chorus.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it cannot, for me, it cannot be pegged. So when you're listening to a Siberry song or album, you just don't know where it's gonna go. And I really do appreciate that. So as an artist and as an album, this falls into that heavily into that category of um, something that just hits me so wonderfully that relatively very few people are gonna get, much less know of.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so there you go.
There we go. Thank you so
Let me
much
shut
for
up now.
that. No, it's fine. You don't need to shut up on this channel, please. Um, my opinion of this album, when I hear Jane Siberry, when I hear One More Color, I'm 15 again. It just brings me right back to that time period to me, it was simplicity, of innocence, because at 15, what do you know of the world and of life experience, right? So it's just like, first of all, I've got to say the two singles of One More Color and Map of the World Part Two were all over Much Music. There was a company named Video Fact that would grant money to artists that were not so much independent artists, but also artists that really didn't have a lot of money to do videos. So Gene Sibley was one of them. So whenever you would see One More Color come on Much Music, it would say by way of MCA Records and Video Fact. Lo and behold, Video Fact turned out to be Much Music under another name that would fund these videos. That was a bit of controversy in the end there. But that aside, this album to me, Jane Sibley for me, very much like Kate Bush, where she's an individual, an artist that does whatever the hell she wants to do. She is not bound by the pop idiom rules uh, that so many are bound by in terms of structure of a pop song. Um, and this album is evidence of that. She would go on to sign with Warner's and release The Walking in '87. And she said in an interview, when I signed Warner Brothers, I told them, do not try and make me a pop star. Do not try and make me follow your rules, because you know what? It's going to be frustrating for you, and it's going to be very frustrating for me. So right off the bat, do not do that.
Yeah.
So right at the signing of the record deal, she told them that this is what's going to happen, and you're not going to do this. And I applaud her for it because, yeah, I mean, when I first heard, the first time I heard Jane Siberry was a track called "Mimi on the Beach"
Yep.
from her
Sure.
second release. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This does not make any sense whatsoever. It's basically pop flipped upside down. Okay.
Yep.
Well, you know what? I like that idea. I like flipping everything upside down once in a while.
Sure.
Why not go crazy once in a while? Because you know what? If you go crazy once in a while, you do in the long run at one point maintain your sanity. Because if you're she's always been an artist that has not been constricted or restricted by rules and regulations. And she's she's happier for it. You know, this album for me is sublime. There's not one track on this album that I can really pinpoint. I mean, except I will say this. If people watching can find a live video of Map of the World Part 2, which was recorded in Montreal at the Spectrum, it is a lively bit of performance that is simply fantastic. First of all, and in terms of song structures, if you look at the songs overall, they're very lengthy. They're very expansive. She from the get-go did not fit in the 3 minute plus pop format. And she stuck to her guns. And this album, to me, I mean, unfortunately, you cannot get it anymore in terms of Amazon, etc. If you go to her website, you can get it, but it's no longer in print, unfortunately. And yeah, she
It's on
is,
all the streaming services though,
and
so you
also,
can
okay,
definitely hear it.
okay. And on YouTube, you can stream it. So yeah, this album is just, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's a slice of 80s pop. Is it dated? Maybe, but you know what? So who the hell cares? It is what it is. And sometimes you just need to sit and listen to something that, did I just understand what I just heard? Maybe you may not understand it all at once. You may have to listen to it a few times. So what? So what? If you understood everything that you heard right off the bat, it'd be pretty boring, wouldn't it? That's my view of it. But yeah, no, I think it's a good album, and it's an album I'm going to revisit again. So, but we must carry on, ladies and gentlemen. Our last album to talk about is an album that is
Before we
sorry, go
quick
ahead.
question, quick question to Jim. You mentioned right at the outset the sort of dichotomy between bright pop songs and what you call German expressionism. Would you then be consider this sort of valid as a companion piece to David Bowie's Low?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
I have not spent a whole lot of time with Low. I think that just from what I remember, kind of listening to it in my head over the last 10 seconds here, I think Low is a lot darker. Um, and maybe that has to do with the fact that, side two is basically all instrumental. Um,
True.
Warsazawa, is that how it's pronounced, is from the
Warzawa,
Low album?
Warzawa. Yeah,
Warzawa, yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can see, some similarities there. But I think Low probably stands on its own as a bit more darker sort of piece.
Fair enough. I think the contrast between the two sides is a lot greater in Low.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, that was a good question. It's a
good point.
good point to make. Sorry about that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our last album to discuss is an album that is celebrating its 30th anniversary. We are looking at Emmylou Harris with her release of Wrecking Ball, released September 26th, 1995. Recorded in 1995, released to Osama Electra Records, with a playing time of 53 minutes and 9 seconds, produced by one Daniel Lanois. I'm sure you've heard of him. Uh, with a listing of alternative country, Americana, country rock, and dream pop. Now, you know, glitches aside, we won't go into that. We'll talk later off camera. Uh, I
Not to
will uh,
worry.
I will give first of all, there are 12 tracks on this album. There are uh, cover songs from she's covered tunes from Neil Young, songs written by Anna McGarrigle, part of the McGarrigle sisters, Bob Dylan, Lucinda Williams, and I will give my opinion on this album at the very end. Jim, you pushed for
Yeah,
inclusion of this album on
I
this
did
list.
push for inclusion on it.
Please,
Yes.
please do state your point of view as to why you included it. Please do.
Um, well, when we sort of mapped out this plan in the beginning of 2025, we had included albums from like, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and became pretty clear um, early on. It's like, yeah, the 90s stuff, we're just not feeling it. We should just sort of cut our losses and not sort of continue with the 90s side of thing. However, I really wanted to push for this album because it is so unique to my ears at least. Um, and Daniel Lanois, I think, is, the chief suspect about why this album sounds so unique. Um, Having said that, there are parts of it that sound very U2-ish. It also sounds pretty Peter Gabriel-ish in parts in terms of the atmosphericness about everything, which makes a ton of sense because Lanois worked with both U2 and Peter Gabriel.
And the fact
Um,
that Larry Mullen Jr. plays on the album on a few of the tracks.
Yep, absolutely. So to me, I this record is very special to me for a number of reasons. It's an album that's kind of world weary but eternally optimistic. So there's that dichotomy that kind of works for me in what's happening lyrically and musically. I think Daniel Lanois has a real deft hand at doing something that's very sparse but also atmospheric at the same time, and it really kind of helps to just unlock the passion and longing that's in Emmylou's vocals. It's interesting that this episode has three, you know, three women singers who are very, very, specifically stylistic about how they, you know, sing and how they approach their material. Um, Emmylou, I don't think comes anywhere near this. You wouldn't confuse Emmylou for Kate Bush, that's for darn sure. Um,
That's for darn
I
sure.
think, yeah. However, Emmylou's vocals, I don't know if Kate could sing these songs, just like in the same way I don't think Emmylou could sing stuff off Hounds of Love. Um, these songs for me are um, kind of haunted by spirits in a way. Again, kind of going back to what I said, it's world weary but eternally optimistic. And whether you're kind of talking about, like the Holy Spirit, because there's a lot of gospel-y type songs on here, or whether you're just talking about, ghosts from her past or whatever, there's this haunted nature that I think that Lenoir really captures very, very well on this record about how the songs are arranged and how the guitar atmospherics really lend itself well to that. Um, Dream pop, I guess that's where the atmospheric guitars come from. I guess they're trying to place it to be like Mazzy Star or something. But to me, this is an album that's just heavy on sort of roots rock and gospel, just from the first, the side A on the record, Where Will I Be, Goodbye, All My Tears, All My Tears is an, frickin' 11 out of 10 song for me. It's so wonderfully done. Wrecking Ball, the Neil Young cover, going back to Harlan, Deeper Well, it's just like the riches just kind of keep unfolding for me, track by track on this. Um, there's also a lot of interesting techniques that Lanois is giving to very specific songs. All My Tears has a very Native American feel to it, and Goodbye has these like subtle trip hop undertones that kind of help propel the song along. Um, but yeah, to me, I bucked for including this, even though we decided to say goodbye to the 90s, just because it is such a very special record. And I think it's one of those things that, you know, I don't have 1,001 albums to Hear Before You Die list in my head, but if I did, I would put this on there just because it's so heartfelt, unique, and just such a just such a heartfelt, revelation just in terms of joyfulness and longing just working so well together. So that's that's why I went for Wrecking Ball. It's a tremendous record to me.
Okay. All right.
And
Fair
if you
enough.
have a one word review, I'm gonna fly up to Edmonton and slap your face, but we'll get there.
Okay. So, Ghosh, your opinion of this album?
So I heard this album for the first time today, and although I'm quite familiar with Emilio Harris in general, it made me realize once again why, even though I don't like country music, one of the few exceptions I will make for country music is Emilio Harris, and this album is a perfect example of why that exception should rightfully be made. It is astounding. I mean, this is from somebody who's had, some 30 years of career almost at this point. And yes, a lot of the credit goes to Daniel Lanois. He's, created a whole different
Mm.
universe of these songs, so to speak. And the way he has brought in his effects and production and layers of synths and whatever it is, it really works very well with the lyrical and musical content. I would say probably the dream pop references are maybe from the fact that for someone who is generally whose vocals are so rich and clear and upfront, uh, one thing you could say about this record is that uh, her vocals appear a bit more subdued, a little more in the background, so to speak. The synths and atmosphere take a little bit of a front row seat. but that's the reason the album works. I mean, it has this overarching sound and mood that runs through all the tracks, and that gives it a different kind of flavor. And like I said, somebody who's been who's already had a very long career to reinvent themselves in this manner at this point. Uh, and interestingly, Daniel Lanois seems to have been a part of it again a couple of years later for Bob Dylan in much the same way. Uh, I think both those albums stand together very well as an example of what artists can achieve late in their career. And to my mind, Time Out of Mind is probably the last great Dylan album. I don't think he's done anything that comes close to that since. So, in a similar vein, I think both records really stand up as an example of what Lenoir with his sensibilities has brought to time-tested artists who are still willing to attempt something new. I can't go through this track by track because every track is just superlative. There is nothing here that's even one quarter of a degree below excellent. But yes, I would like to highlight the title track. It is just so emotional. Uh, I mean, it's a beautiful song. Neil Young. It's not a song I was very familiar with as part of the Neil Young canon, but this version is just it hits you right in the heart. And I think was it All My Tears? I don't remember which track it was. There's one track which has this very crazy, you know, throbbing synth bass happening. I
Yeah,
don't remember which. Was. I
I
think
think
it
it's
was
All
All
My
My Tears.
Tears. Yeah.
Yeah. And that really hits you in the face. I mean, it's something you absolutely not expecting. It sounds like it might have belonged on something by Prodigy or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Prodigy, that's a name I haven't heard in a
Yeah.
while. Oh my God. Okay.
that that is probably you know the the special something that Lano brings to the mix. He just can bring these very disparate and incongruous kind of elements into the music, and they still make perfect sense somehow when it all comes together.
Yeah.
This is a terrific album. It's a 10 on 10 for me.
Okay. Ken.
This is for me a very 90s album. Um, Daniel Lanois is I mean he's a legend in the industry. Um, he left a lot of fingerprints all over the place. I pick up a lot of Steve Earle influences on this album, maybe in places where it really isn't there, but I still feel it. Um, Once upon a time, there was also a great producer called Alan Parsons,
He's still
and
around, by the way,
he's
ladies and
still
gentlemen.
around, yeah, but he made a career um, by creating the Alan Parsons Project. Um, to me, this feels more like it should have been titled the Daniel Lanois Project. Um,
Okay. That's
I love
interesting.
Emmylou Harris. This album has incredibly strong musicians, uh, uh, an incredible song lineup, but I sometimes get the feel listening to this that it's like, okay, we've got all this, now we just need someone to sing. And I feel like just Emmylou was just kind of plugged in. I'm not saying she's singing that way, because she brought her A game here, but it just didn't feel like Emmylou to me. Um,
Okay, I
there,
hear what you're saying. I hear what you're
yeah,
saying.
and of course, the same can be said um, with other country artists that were doing a similar thing at the same time. Um, but three songs stood out for me, which is Sweet Old World, Orphan Girl, and Black Hawk. Those were the particular standouts. Um, I thought Every Grain of Sand was a really nice, good, and interesting Dylan cover. Um, if I didn't know that that was the Dylan cover, I probably wouldn't have guessed. I thought it was a very good reworking of that. Yeah, like I said, it feels very 90s. It just feels like more of a producer album than it does an Emmylou Harris album. But that's not saying that I might not get curious and go back and give it some more listens than just the two or three that I did. So props.
Okay. Well, my opinion of this album, it's not a no. I'm not going to say that. But um, how can I put this diplomatically? I can I applaud her for tackling this project the way she did. I did have trouble understanding what she was singing. Her vocal delivery was a little not off-putting, but it's just sort of like I couldn't understand the lyrics. You know, the way her vocal phrasing was a bit off for me. Um, I do hear, in terms of the sound palette on the album, there's a big word, sound palette, phrase. I do hear the U2 reference in this, with regards to the work with Daniel Lanois. I applaud her effort to do something that she wanted to do that may not be viewed as mainstream country or mainstream Americana, but I mean, I do believe it reached number 92 in the charts. So not a big hit for her, but I do applaud the fact that she did an album that she wanted to do on her own terms. And if it was a hit, great. I do kind of see Asylum Electro saying, "Okay, where's the hit that we can use for this?" But would I go back to it again? The jury's out on that still. It's just uh, I do kind of get where you're coming from, Ken, with you know, it's a Daniel Lanois album. Let's put Emmylou Harris on lead vocals, after the fact kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, Jim obviously thought there was a reason to bring this forward for consideration, and I can understand that. So,
Well, all right then. I
right.
want to throw three other quick comments in there about this. To Ken, you brought up the point is that it sounds kind of like the Daniel Lanois project. There's an album that he did in 2010 under the name Black Dub that is, if you want something that is a kind of a, I'll call it a spiritual successor to Wrecking Ball. Black Dub really kind of is that and is very much a Daniel Lanois project. It's got Brian Blade on drums, Trixie Whitley on vocals. It's an outstanding record. Um, as far as Emmylou goes, she did an album after this, a live album called Spy Boy, which has Buddy Miller featured on guitar, and it's very much a stripped down approach to the material that's on Wrecking Ball, and also kind of applies that vibe to some of her older tunes as well. So it's really a neat live album from that point, kind of merging of the two styles, if you will. And then lastly, there's a subsequent album to that called Red Dirt Girl that was produced by Buddy Miller as well. And that is a probably more of a traditional Emmylou album, but it's got that sort of Buddy Miller roots approach to it. And I highly recommend that record as well, especially the song Michelangelo is like an 11 out of 10 track for me. So um, I'm, great comments all around, and thanks Armando for humoring me on this one. hopefully other folks will take a listen and enjoy.
Yeah, it's nothing but humoring you. I mean, it was an album that you wanted to talk about, so we threw it in and we talked about it. Um, it's fine. And when we do the Tea Party album ranking with you, listening to every album 3 times before we do a ranking, then you're gonna, you'll understand where I'm coming from with the okay.
Well,
So
in
that
in
was a
in
joke.
talking about this album, obviously, at least for me, the parallel is the Johnny Cash albums. I think he did four,
Oh, the
I believe,
American.
The
the
American, yeah,
American.
album, yeah.
And even that was the result was not for me uh, consistent. There
Hmm.
were some, to me, I probably could have culled those four albums down to a single album.
Or even a
Um,
double disc.
yeah, that
Like,
would have been, all really good stuff, but you know, that's okay. It's definitely has its audience. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, like I said, a lot of artists have been doing this stuff or some various form of it.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way, guys. Like, if I've said this before, if you're an artist that has a career that has had, sorry, longevity in your career, and you've been around, say, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to want, and you want to continue, obviously, you're going to want to do stuff that is going to be satisfying to you first and foremost, and just
Well,
something to get
hopefully,
out
yeah.
of your system. I mean, look at what you two did with Passengers, original soundtrack, with Pavarotti, etc. You know, artists need to stretch out and do different things, in order to keep themselves interested first and foremost. Again, that's my very humble opinion. I'm not an artist, I'm not a performer, but
Yeah,
but
but
I
there's
mean,
but
sorry, go
there are a
ahead.
lot of artists that do that as a cash grab, though. So and so does an American songbook, and I mean, like someone should have put Rod Stewart out of our misery a long time ago. Sorry,
You have
that's
no
me.
argument from me in terms of the songbook situation, because I mean, when he went into the rock songbook, it's like, okay, you know what? Now you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. If you want to do, basically, and long story short, an artist's responsibility should first and foremost be to themselves. What's going to make me as an artist interested in what I'm doing? And if you're just going to do something for a cash grab, I'm sure there are artists out there, Taylor Swift, that does that. I'm not saying that they don't. There are artists out there, Taylor Swift, that will do that. That's just another, that's just the way it is.
Sure.
But I mean, I can see her wanting to, Emmylou Harris in this case, I could see her wanting to do something that was sort of left of center or right of center. For me, I
Mhm.
just had a hard time deciphering what the vocals were, what the lyrics were. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. And I'm straining to hear. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, like it is what it is. But all right,
Well,
ladies and gentlemen.
that might be a good idea for another video. Artists that crossed genres successfully. Don't know.
Okay.
Jim, that would bring your Linda Ronstadt with big band
Mhm.
as an example. You know, she goes from Elvis Costello to big band
All
and
right.
made it work.
We'll
So
talk
but
about that
anyway,
off camera. We can talk
yeah,
about that off camera.
yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Any other comments, notes, jibes? Taylor Swift jibes? Go on. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Albums celebrating their 40th and 30th anniversaries, respectively. I want to thank the team for joining me again on this episode. Ken, Sagosh, and Jim. Please put down in the comments below your opinion of these albums or any other albums that we maybe should be talking about. Maybe we missed the boat completely on these albums. Maybe you want to give your insight as to what makes these albums great, or did these albums miss the mark in your opinion? Again, no right or wrong answers, just opinions, all right? Please click like and subscribe, and do hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we've got coming up. We've got a lot of shows that we're working on, and yeah, yeah, this has been fun, and we will see you soon again on the music then. Bye for now.